Welcome to your week 3 video lecture on macro and micronutrients. Since we have so many chapters to cover this week, chapters 4 through 8, I wanted to make a video where I tried to condense down some of the most important takeaways for us in Health 120 from these chapters. Because at the end of the day, Health 120, in my opinion, is a course designed to help us all with our personal nutrition in a way that we can adopt a more healthy nutritional lifestyle, but we don't necessarily need to always get into the nitty-gritty details of the science behind nutrition. I think that we could save for more advanced courses. So if you do find that this course is very interesting to you, you might want to consider taking more advanced courses in nutrition. But here we go. I'm going to try to go through this at a fairly rapid pace. So let's get started. Essential nutrients. So we have 2 categories of essential nutrients. That's what this week is all about. We have macronutrients, macro meaning larger, and then micro meaning smaller, micronutrients. Macro, the larger nutrients, these are the ones that our body needs in larger quantities. Carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. Micronutrients are vitamins, minerals, and water. So there's 6 essential nutrients total, and they're broken into 2 different categories, macro and micronutrients. So overall, when we think of macro and micronutrients, these 6 essential nutrients, this is really important to understand in terms of the fuel our body needs to be healthy. But for us, I think it's most important to try to think about how we plan our meals using the figure on the right, the My Plate, choosemyplate.gov. So we're going to talk a lot about that website in this course. So I think it's easier for us personally to plan how we eat and try to be healthy based on these Choose My Plate recommendations. So I wanted to kind of walk you through how you would classify macronutrients in the real world to Choose My Plate. So when we look at Choose My Plate, we can think of carbohydrates. Oh, there we go. As fruits, vegetables, and grains. So carbohydrates are fruits, vegetables, and grains. Primarily, that's where you get the best source of carbohydrates from. Keep in mind that the reason this gets kind of confusing is because we do see carbohydrates, fats, proteins, vitamins, minerals, and water in a variety of foods. But the easiest way to categorize this in our mind is to think, okay, the best way for me to get carbohydrates in a healthy way is through fruits, vegetables, and grains. Okay, when we think about proteins, this is a great visual from our textbook that shows us how proteins can be found in all of the food groups. But you'll notice that there's some specific foods that we'll talk about in a bit that will really get into higher serving sizes of protein. And then lastly, fats. We'll talk about this in more detail in a moment as well. But the key takeaway here is that there's 2 categories that we really look at fats in, which is saturated and unsaturated fats. So let's go ahead and take a deeper dive into these macronutrients. Carbohydrates. Carbs are the most desirable form of energy for the body. They're found primarily in plant-based foods, grains, vegetables, fruits, like we just talked about, and they're also found in nuts and legumes. Foods with naturally occurring sugar tend to be more nutrient dense, like bananas naturally has sugar. There's also something called added sugars, which have more empty calories and fewer nutrients typically. When you're looking at food labels, pay attention to that added sugar section. We do want to make sure that we are avoiding added sugar as much as we can. Overall, added sugar should not exceed 100 calories or 6 teaspoons a day for women, and then added sugar should not exceed 150 calories a day or 9 teaspoons a day for men. You can think of carbohydrates in 2 categories, simple and complex. Simple carbohydrates are the ones that aren't as good for us. They are the ones found in soda and cereal. Complex carbohydrates are the ones we should try to be incorporating into our diet. These are good examples of complex carbohydrates. This graphic comes from our textbook, and it's a great way to highlight how if you're craving something like cornflakes, this would be a healthier way to fuel your body. If you're craving something salty and you want a snack, rather than pretzels, what about popcorn? Fiber is a really important part of grains, or of carbohydrates, rather. Fiber is an important part of carbohydrates. It's a non-digestible polysaccharide. Dietary fiber is the fiber that's naturally found in foods. Functional fiber is the fiber that's added to foods. And then when you put the dietary and functional fiber together, that's referred to as total fiber. Overall, just remember that fiber is a really important part of nutrition, and that when we're eating fibrous foods, especially if we're increasing our intake of fiber, make sure we're also increasing our intake of water. Overall, because of fiber's role of really kind of clearing out our digestive system, helping things move along the way they're supposed to, this is what makes it an anti-cancer agent. So how does this apply to the real world? We hear a lot about grains and whole wheat and refined grains, what kind of bread we should buy, and our textbook does a great job of breaking down why certain grains are more nutritious than others. So overall, grains have 3 edible parts: the bran, the endosperm, and the germ. When we eat refined grains, that's when the mill removes the bran and the germ. Enriched grains have folic acid, thiamine, niacin, riboflavin, and other minerals added to restore some of the lost nutrition from the refining. Whole grains contain all 3 parts: bran, germ, and endosperm. Some examples of whole grain foods: brown rice, oatmeal, whole wheat bread. These, again, are considered our complex carbohydrates. Alrighty, on to our second macronutrient, lipids. Lipids are really important. They're protective cushioning for our bones, organs, and nerves. They also help regulate our body temperature. It's important to note that when we say lipids, we're using that interchangeably with fats, even though fats really are just one kind of lipid, which is triglycerides. We'll refer to lipids and fats interchangeably in this course. So there are 3 different classifications of lipids: triglycerides, phospholipids, and sterols. The daily recommended intake is that we have 20 to 35% of our total calories coming from fat. Fatty acids are an important component of healthy nutrition as well. It is recommended that we have at least 2 servings of fish per week because of the essential fatty acids in fish. We can use this chart from our textbook to help us understand some foods that'll have the most amount of essential fatty acids, so we can try to incorporate a variety of those into our day. And a key takeaway about fats from this week is that we want to avoid saturated fats and we want to increase unsaturated fats. Another way to say that same thing is we want to avoid unhealthy fats, the saturated fats, and we want to increase healthy fats. The unhealthy fats are saturated fats. And an easy way to remember saturated from unsaturated is that saturated fats, think saturated, solid, they're solid fats at room temperature. Unsaturated fats are liquid at room temperature. All right, on to our third macronutrient, proteins. Proteins are the predominant structural and functional material in every cell. All proteins consist of a chain of some combination of amino acids. Amino acids can be used to make body proteins or other substances like hormones. You'll note that on our choosemyplate.gov website, we do see that we have a food category called protein, even though protein can be found in all the food groups. But this food group called protein is called protein because it has the best sources of protein. So let's quickly pop over to our choosemyplate.gov website. So when I go to the home, choosemyplate.gov, I scroll down and I see this interactive plate. I'm going to click on protein, view food gallery, and we see a nifty tool to help us with this will help us with our grocery list activity on our worksheet this week, where we're going to create a grocery list that incorporates all 5 food groups. So here's a big list of different foods that are recommended for the protein category. A key piece of this course is to try to explore foods and see what you like. And I think that choosemyplate.gov will be a really helpful tool for you as you're trying to explore and learn about what kind of foods you like. Because at the end of the day, we need to enjoy the foods we eat, or chances are we're not going to maintain our healthy habits. So next, how much protein do we need in a day? Let's do some math. Pretend that I am a 200-pound male. I need to first, and I'm 20 years old, 20-year-old, 200-pound male. So I need to have 0.8 grams per kilogram of protein compared to my body weight for my age. So how do I figure this out? First, I need to convert my pounds, 200 pounds, to kilograms. So 200 divided by 2.2, 90 kilograms of body weight. I know I need 0.8 grams of protein for every pound. So now, or for every kilogram, So now I multiply my 90 kilograms by 0.8. So I know that if I'm a 20-year-old, 200-pound male, it's recommended that I get 72 grams of protein per day. Protein can be found in all of the food groups, but check out your textbook to find the food groups that can give you the most bang for your buck and the foods that have the most protein in them. Alrighty, moving on to our micronutrient section. So vitamins and minerals are our micronutrients. And one of my favorite tips that we can learn about vitamins and minerals is a slogan that comes from choosemyplate.gov. They say vary your veggies, and what they're saying is to add variety of color into your plate, because the more color that we have on our plate, the more variety of different phytochemicals, the more variety of vitamins and minerals that we'll have in our diet. So have a colorful plate for a healthy plate. When it comes to supplements, make sure that we're seeking a registered dietitian's advice before starting any supplements. Be very cautious of what you see in the media, and just remember that whole foods are the best way to get our nutrition, unless a registered dietitian or professional medical doctor tells us otherwise. Whole foods, try to avoid supplements if possible, unless your registered dietitian tells you to take them. All right, the last micronutrient and our last essential nutrient is water. It's extremely important because it transports oxygen and nutrients, gets rid of waste products, maintains our body temperature, lubricates our joints, and it's also a protective cushion for our brain and organs. The more water that we lose through sweat, the more water we need to take in. Check out your textbook for recommendations on water intake. One of the best ways to monitor our hydration levels is by the color of our pee. We want to aim to have pee that is a very pale yellow to a more clear color. Overall, I hope this quick, down and dirty, week 3 lecture video showed us that micro and macronutrients are essential for our bodies and health. But my advice, don't plan your diet around macros or micros. do plan your diet based on the food groups using choosemyplate.gov.